Can you feel the bite of that frigid morning air? It was Veterans Day weekend, and a ghostly mist draped itself over the parking lot of the National Museum of the United States Army in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, softening the edges of the world like memories fading with time. Through this haze stepped an old man, his worn boots kissing the dew-soaked ground, leaving faint traces of his journey. His pace was slow, deliberate, each step a testament to a body that had endured more than most could imagine, a slight limp favoring his left side, a silent echo of battles fought long ago. Draped over his shoulders was an aged brown bomber jacket, its cuffs frayed, the zipper replaced with a humble loop of thread. This wasn't just any jacket, it was a time capsule, issued decades before the glittering guests inside were even born. In his trembling hands, he clutched a weathered envelope, its edges bent, his name, Mr. Raymond Ellis, scrawled in looping ink like a whisper from the past. Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness tug at your heartstrings. Let's dive in and uncover what really happened that day. Raymond Ellis wasn't the type to rush, oh no. He arrived more than an hour early, not out of worry, but because that's who he was, early, careful, unhurried. A man forged in the fires of discipline, shaped by silence and survival. He didn't trust the chaos of crowds, the tyranny of clocks, or the hollow pomp of fanfare. At 76, he stood as one of the last living veterans of the Chosin Reservoir Campaign in the Korean War, a former Marine Staff Sergeant whose life was a quiet monument to duty. He rarely spoke of the war, or much of anything, for that matter, but nestled in his hand was a handwritten letter from Dr. Malene Porter, the museum's chief curator. She'd personally invited him to the opening gala of the new Korean War exhibit, a space he'd helped craft with his artifacts, field sketches, and those precious, hard-won memories he'd shared. No speech needed, she'd promised. Just show up. He hadn't RSVP'd, ceremonies weren't his style, but here he was, drawn by a call he couldn't ignore. As he neared the museum, a plush red carpet stretched out beneath the soft glow of morning lights, a stark contrast to the humble figure he cut. He paused, adjusting the collar of his jacket, while the world moved around him. Young men in tailored suits strutted by, women in dazzling dresses glided past, their heels clicking against the polished stone, clutches tucked under their arms. Did they even see him? Not a chance. Raymond stood like a shadow, unnoticed amidst the sparkle and shine. At the check-in table loomed Ethan Miles, the event coordinator, his slick back hair gleaming, a silver name tag pinned to his chest. Behind a sleek tablet, he flashed rehearsed smiles at the guests. Raymond waited, patient as ever, until the line thinned, then stepped forward, offering his envelope. "I'm Raymond Ellis," he said, his voice steady yet quiet, a thread of calm in the storm. "I received a letter from Dr. Porter." Ethan snatched the envelope, eyeing the creased paper as if it might sully his pristine hands. He skimmed it, then looked up, his tone dripping with dismissal. "I'm sorry, sir, but your name isn't on the primary guest list. This is just a supplementary invite from the curatorial team." Raymond nodded, unshaken. "She asked me to attend," he said simply. Ethan's eyes raked over him, those scuffed boots, that tattered jacket, the weight of his years. "Well," he murmured, his voice dropping to a smug whisper, "this is a black tie event. Formal dress is required, and that jacket? It doesn't cut it." He waved a hand at Raymond's attire. "I can't let you in, sir. We have standards to uphold." Can you believe the nerve? The words weren't vicious, but they stung, practiced, dismissive, loud enough to turn heads. A woman nearby whispered to her friend, a man lingered his gaze a beat too long before turning away. But Raymond? He didn't fight back. He didn't demand justice. He folded that envelope with care and slipped it into his jacket pocket, then stepped aside, limping toward the velvet rope guarding the exhibit entrance. He didn't try again, he just stood there, a silent figure against the tide. Through the glass, he glimpsed the exhibit, stark black and white photos, dim spotlights on display cases, and a massive campaign map dominating the center. That map. He knew it like his own heartbeat, born as a pencil sketch on soggy field paper in the brutal winter of 1950, a lifeline that had saved souls in the chaos of war. Now, just a conversation piece for the well-dressed. Inside, the gala buzzed with life, champagne trays gliding through the crowd, polite laughter ringing out, camera flashes slicing the air. But outside, no one saw the man by the rope. How could they know the depth of his story? That he'd once pressed his bare hand to a young lieutenant's artery, holding life in place until help came? That a photo in that exhibit showed 5 young Marines, for who never made it home, and he'd carried the 5th, the lone survivor, from a frozen trench? He didn't shout it out. He didn't need to. That wasn't Raymond Ellis. Yet someone did notice. Lena Chambers, a museum intern, paused mid-step, brochures in hand near the east wing. She saw him, alone, still, his eyes locked on the exhibit through the glass. Drawn by his quiet resolve, she approached, her voice soft as a breeze. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you? Are you waiting for someone?" Raymond turned, his eyes steady, deep, like a well that had given too much but never emptied. "No," he said. "Just waiting." Lena hesitated, then pressed on. "Are you Mr. Ellis?" He blinked, caught off guard. Dr. Porter mentioned someone by that name, she added, a vital part of this exhibit. Before he could reply, Ethan swooped in, his tone sharp as a blade. "Lena," he snapped, "I've already told this gentleman he's not admitted tonight." Lena's face flushed. "I was just trying to, this is a formal event," Ethan cut in. "We keep it professional." He turned to Raymond, voice flat and cold. "Sir, if you stay, I'll have to call security." Raymond held his gaze, unshaken. "I'm not causing trouble," he said softly. "I'm waiting for Dr. Porter." Ethan's tight smile oozed condescension. "Dr. Porter's busy with VIPs. I'm sure you get it." Raymond didn't bite. He turned back to the glass, his silence a louder rebuke than words. More guests poured in, their eyes brushing over him, some puzzled, some indifferent, most blank. He stood like a relic of a past too heavy to embrace, a history too inconvenient to face. A draft from the entrance tugged at his thin jacket, but he adjusted his collar without a shiver. Cold. He'd known worse. Waiting. He'd mastered it. If Dr. Porter didn't come, he'd leave, quietly, as he'd arrived. Why did he stay? Not out of spite or hope, but because he had nowhere else to be, and because a face in a grainy photo wouldn't let him go. Koskasi 23, a second lieutenant from Omaha, freckles dotting his face, his laugh a half-second too loud. Fresh from West Point, green as spring wheat, he'd dubbed Raymond Sergeant E. That photo captured them before the final push had chosen, 5 Marines in a trench, half smiling, half spent. Raymond crouched low, eyes shadowed, snow in his collar. Casey had written home before that shot, telling his mom the cold wasn't so bad, that he was learning, that his NCO had his back. Raymond read that letter, later, after the unthinkable. Why that photo? There were livelier ones, full of hope. Maybe it was meant to show war's true cost, raw and unfiltered. Then, bam, the doors hissed open behind him, shattering the stillness. Bootsteps followed, steady, deliberate, not the shuffle of guests or interns' nervous taps, but military boots, steeped in ceremony. Raymond didn't turn. He didn't need to. The rhythm pulsed in his bones. Inside, the crowd hushed, the string quartet's notes fading like a held breath. A voice boomed, calm, commanding, familiar, Sergeant Ellis. He turned. There stood a towering figure, uniform crisp, boots polished to a mirror shine. For silver stars gleamed on his shoulders, ribbons cascaded down his chest, General Matthew Conrad. Raymond blinked. The green lieutenant from Chosen was gone, replaced by a man carved by time, revered by nations. But those eyes? Unchanged, brimming with recognition, relief, reverence. The general strode forward, parting the crowd like Moses. Staff froze, guests gaped, and Ethan. He looked like he'd been dunked in ice. Conrad stopped before Raymond and, snap, saluted, sharp and flawless, a gesture that roared with meaning. Raymond stiffened, then returned it, slower but steady as stone. Conrad's hand fell, a smile breaking through. "You came," he said softly. Raymond nodded. "Didn't think you'd be here." "Wasn't sure you would," Conrad replied. They stood, two souls bridged by war and decades. Then Conrad faced the crowd, his voice a force of nature. "This man," he declared, "is why I'm here today." Confusion rippled through the room. He pressed on. "You've heard of Chosen Reservoir, but do you know it? 30 below zero, ice underfoot, wounded and surrounded, leaving no one behind, even if it meant dying with them." Raymond's jaw tightened, eyes down. "I was 23, Conrad said, green as hell. Took a round to the hip, face down in the snow, bleeding out. But he came back, under fire, carried me 600 yards, shrapnel in his shoulder, dragging two others, refusing to leave until every man was safe." He stepped closer. "You saved me, Sergeant Ellis, and never asked for a damn thing." He turned to Ethan, voice calm but lethal. "Did you deny this man entry?" Ethan stammered, "Sir, the dress code," his name wasn't. Conrad's hand silenced him. "Enough." Facing the room, he thundered, "We're here to honor history, yet we reject a man who is that history." Silence fell, heavy and absolute. "I've seen men freeze in foxholes, brothers carry brothers through hell. This man's jacket? It's history itself." Standing by Raymond, he roared, "If he's not welcome, I'm not either. This gala's done." Gasps erupted, then stillness. The military delegation followed him out, champagne abandoned, lights dimming. Conrad turned to Raymond. "Let's see your exhibit. You've earned it." Raymond nodded, and together they walked, boots echoing like thunder, the crowd parting in awe. Raymond stood there, silent as a stone, but oh, what a story his silence told. Can you imagine it? A lifetime of truth, of grit, of unsung courage carved into every line on his weathered face. He didn't need to speak, his very presence roared with the weight of a hero's life. General Conrad turned to Ethan, and the poor kid looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. "Is it true?" Conrad's voice cut through the air, calm yet sharp as a blade. "Did you really deny this man entry to this event?" Ethan's throat bobbed, his words stumbling out in a panicked rush. "General, sir, there was a dress code, and I didn't, he wasn't on the main list, and," Conrad's hand shot up, silencing him mid-sentence. "Enough," he snapped, and the room held its breath. The general faced the crowd, his eyes blazing with a fire born of respect and fury. "We came here tonight to honor history, to lift up the brave souls who served this nation. And yet, can you believe it, we turned away one of the last living legends who is that history." The room froze, dead silent, every soul riveted. Nobody dared move. Conrad's voice dropped, softer now, but heavier than a cannonball. "I've seen young men freeze to death in foxholes, their breath stolen by the cold. I've watched brothers stagger through snow, carrying their wounded under a hail of mortar fire. And I've seen what happens when this country forgets who paid for its freedom in blood and tears." His gaze locked on Ethan, piercing through him. "This man isn't dressed inappropriately, he's cloaked in history itself." Conrad stepped to Raymond's side, standing tall like a sentinel. "If he's not welcome here, then neither am I," he declared, his words ringing out like a battle cry. He turned to the museum director, the staff, the stunned crowd. "This gala is over." Gasps erupted, murmurs rippled, then a stillness so deep you could hear a pin drop. He wasn't bluffing, no way. One by one, the military delegation spun on their heels and marched out, honor guards, commanders, aides abandoning trays of untouched champagne, leaving conversations dangling and spotlights fading into silence. What a sight! The general gestured to Raymond, his voice softening. Let's go see the exhibit you built. You've earned more than a fleeting peek through glass. Raymond hesitated, then gave a small nod, his eyes glinting with something unspoken. As they strode side by side into the museum's heart, the crowd parted, not out of stuffy formality this time, but out of pure, raw respect. The echo of their boots on the marble boomed like thunder, a sound that shook the soul. Can you feel the weight of that moment? Then, a memory crashed over Raymond like a wave. Chosin Reservoir, 1950. The snow slashed sideways, stinging his face like 1,000 icy knives. The wind howled across the ridge, a shriek like steel scraping bone, chilling him to his core. They'd lost radio contact hours ago, alone in the chaos. The lieutenant had fallen behind a shattered tree line, and 3 others were bleeding out fast. Raymond's hands were numb, his own wound a dull ache he couldn't feel anymore. Blood crusted over his brow, blurring his vision, but did he stop? No. He crawled through that frozen hell, determination burning in his chest. He reached the lieutenant first, face pale as death, lips blue, a bullet clean through his hip, blood pulsing out in a terrifying rhythm. Time was slipping away. Raymond didn't speak, he just hoisted the boy up. The lieutenant's scream pierced the air once, then faded as Raymond pressed on. 2 more men lay down the slope, one with a leg in ruins, the other gasping through a punctured lung. Raymond dragged them all, one by one, to a half-frozen outcrop, shielding them with his own body against the merciless wind. He stayed there, no fire, no light, just the sound of their ragged breaths and the dark pressing in. You stay with me. You stay with me, he whispered, over and over, a lifeline in the night. All 3 survived because of him. And yet, he never breathed a word of it again. Can you fathom that kind of humility? Back in the museum, Raymond stood before the chosen display, the silence wrapping around him like a cloak. The guests had drifted away, unsure what to say, their whispers fading. Staff hovered near the walls, eyes downcast, while only the general remained by his side, a steadfast shadow. Raymond stared at the map, his map, those pencil scratches from a desperate night now laser-printed and framed like some sacred relic. He pointed to a spot near the southern edge, his voice soft as a sigh. We came down through here. Should have been a suicide run, but the ice held, thank God it held. The general nodded, hanging on every word. Raymond's gravelly voice stretched across decades, heavy with memory. I lost 11 men that night. He didn't name them, didn't need to. The silence carried their names, a quiet tribute etched in the air. The museum lobby doors hung open, letting the Virginia evening's chill seep in, but it wasn't the cold that sharpened the air, it was the silence, thick and electric. Word of what happened spread like wildfire through the crowd. Weeks of planning, a gala so carefully crafted, undone in minutes by one man's voice, a 4-star general, and the quiet power of an old Marine. Incredible. Near the check-in desk, Ethan Miles stood like a statue, his tablet clutched tight, a shield he didn't know how to wield anymore. That fake smile. Gone. In its place, a wide-eyed, pale look of dread, he'd messed up, and he knew it. Across the lobby, Malene Porter burst in, her heels clacking on the marble like gunfire as she rushed from the exhibit wing. She'd been stuck doing press interviews, talking about honoring unsung heroes, of all things. But when she saw the tension, the empty space where the general had stood, her heart sank. What happened? She hissed to Lena, the intern. He was denied entry, Mr. Ellis, because of his clothes. Ethan said he didn't meet the dress code. Lena whispered back. Malene's face went white as a ghost. She spotted them, Raymond and General Conrad by the chosen display, deep in quiet talk, and her resolve hardened. She marched over, past velvet ropes and soft lights, her steps quick but reverent. Raymond's fingers brushed the display glass. I drew that map under a mess tent, he said, voice low. We'd lost comms, had to navigate by stars and gut. Conrad nodded, rapt. They built this whole exhibit's movement pattern on it. Never thought I'd see it framed up like this. A pause, then, I didn't draw it to be framed, I drew it so boys could make it home. Malene stepped up, her voice trembling but gentle. Mr. Ellis. He looked up. I'm so sorry, she said, hands clasped tight. I should have met you at the door myself. Raymond gave a small nod. Didn't come here for introductions. Conrad's eyes flashed. He was told to leave, he said, voice flat and cutting. Stood outside the exhibit of his war while folks in tuxedos sipped wine next to his memories. Malene's voice cracked. I invited you because I wanted people to see the real cost of war, not just numbers, but you. Raymond gazed back at the map. Most stories don't fit in glass boxes, he murmured, soft as falling snow. In the lobby, chaos simmered. Richard Quell, the museum director, stormed in, red-faced and panting. He zeroed in on Ethan. What did you do? He snarled, voice low but lethal. Ethan floundered. I followed procedure. He wasn't on the main list, he was wearing. Quell grabbed his arm. That's Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis. You barred a veteran whose notes anchor our chosen exhibit. I didn't know. Ethan stammered. You didn't ask. Quell snapped, turning away before he lost it completely. Guests murmured, some slipping out. The military delegation was long gone, leaving junior officers milling about, lost. No one dared restart the music or touch the champagne, how could they? Then, General Conrad and Raymond stepped back into the lobby, their presence a quiet storm. Dr. Porter trailed them, face grave. Conrad faced the staff, voice steady but unyielding. Every active duty service member is pulling out of this event. No more appearances for this gala. Gasps echoed. Donations will be returned, the army won't tie itself to a place that disrespects the very people it claims to honor. The director lunged forward, desperate. General, please. It was a mistake, a miscommunication. Conrad's eyebrow arched. A miscommunication that saw only the jacket, not the man. Silence fell, heavy and final. He turned to Raymond. Let's go. Outside, a light drizzle kissed the ground. As they headed to the parking lot, a young corporal jogged up, breathless. Sir, Staff Sergeant Ellis, were you really a chosen? Raymond nodded. I was. The kid straightened, awe in his eyes. My granddad was with the 7th Marines. Never talked about it. Raymond gave a faint smile. Most of us didn't. The corporal choked out, thank you, sir, and Raymond just nodded, walking on. By morning, the story exploded, 4-star general shuts down Army gala in protest of disrespect toward war veteran. Headlines screamed it everywhere, local papers, national news, veteran groups, social media. It hit hard, not for drama, but for truth. Clips of Conrad's speech, Raymond's quiet strength, the room stilled by a man in an old bomber jacket saluted by a decorated officer, people didn't just scroll by. They stopped. They wept. It wasn't sad, it was sacred. Inside the museum, the fallout was swift. By noon, Ethan was out, nameplate gone, access revoked. The board issued a mea culpa, signed in public. Dr. Porter, still shaken, proposed renaming the chosen exhibit for Raymond Ellis. Quell balked, but the board, swamped by public outcry and veterans' voices, voted yes. The Raymond Ellis Room, a tribute to a man who never chased glory. Meanwhile, Raymond didn't go home. He spent the day at the VA center, fixing a Marine's wheelchair, no fanfare, no cameras. He still wore that jacket, the one that saw him through 30 below zero hell, that cradled a dying boy's last words, that stood unsaluted until, at last, someone did. What a man! Imagine a night so still you can hear your own heartbeat. Where does a hero go when the world doesn't even know his name? That night, back in his modest apartment tucked above a dusty hardware store, Raymond sat by the window, gazing out at a flickering street lamp pulsing like a weary heart across the parking lot. He didn't bother with the blaring news or bold headlines. No, he just sat there, quiet as ever, cradling a letter in his lap. Can you picture it? The strong, precise handwriting of General Conrad spilling across the page. You didn't just save my life in 1950. You saved something else in that museum, something we forgot we were losing. I can't undo the years, but I can promise you this, your silence has always spoken louder than the world's applause. Raymond set it aside with a soft sigh. He didn't need those words to feel their weight, but oh, how good it felt to know someone finally dared to say them. For over 50 years, his doors stood silent, until that moment. Can you believe it? Someone knocked on Raymond Ellis's door, not out of duty, but pure, heartfelt respect. It started small, like a whisper in the wind, a letter slipped into his mailbox, no return address, just a child's shaky hand-drawn American flag on the envelope. Inside, in bright blue crayon, came the words, "Dear Mr. Ellis, my daddy says you're a hero. Thank you for helping people like him. I love to do." Raymond held that note close that night, held it not like a soldier clutching orders, but like a man grasping a treasure he never thought he'd find again. Recognition, pure and simple, with no strings attached, what a gift. Then, the next morning, another knock. He opened the door, and there stood a high school student, tall and trembling, a junior ROTC pin glinting on his jacket. "Are you the real Raymond Ellis?" the boy asked, his voice quivering with hope. Raymond gave the tiniest nod, barely a flicker, and that boy snapped straight as a flagpole. "My teacher showed us the video from the museum, we watched it 3 times, he blurted. Raymond raised an eyebrow, curious. The boy swallowed hard. "You didn't yell. You didn't argue. You just stood there, and the general saluted you. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Raymond didn't say a word, why would he need to, but he swung the door wide. "Come in," he said, voice steady as stone. "Coffee's on. Can you feel the warmth in that moment?" And then, oh, the change that swept through Belvoir Crossing. Weeks passed, and something stirred. Veterans who hadn't shown their faces in years crept back into the light, tentative but brave. A teacher rewrote her history lessons, calling it, "The Men Who Didn't Speak and Why That Matters." How powerful is that? The mayor begged Raymond to be the guest of honor at the Veterans Day parade, but Raymond? He said no, too humble for the spotlight. Instead, he walked at the back, side by side with a 92-year-old Korean War medic, his service cap dusty from years in a drawer. They didn't wave, didn't speak, but every block they passed. Silent. Not out of obligation, but pure, breathtaking reverence. The National Museum couldn't stay the same either, no way. They rededicated the chosen exhibit, no fanfare, no fireworks, just a simple plaque, the Raymond Ellis Room. For the ones who didn't ask to be remembered, but remembered anyway. Beneath it, a bench, crafted from repurposed oak, polished by loving hands, beckoned with a sign, "Please sit. Please remember." And they did. School kids with wide eyes, veterans with weathered faces, strangers seeking solace, don't you see how one man's silence rippled outward? But wait, the most unexpected wave came from Lena Chambers, a museum intern who never even met Raymond face to face. She tried to speak up at the gala, oh, how she carried that night's weight. When she graduated, her final paper poured out her soul, "We teach military history through battles, bloodlines, and borders." But what about the moments after? The ones no camera caught, no trumpet blared. Like a man standing silent outside a museum, in the same jacket he wore carrying a bleeding officer through a frozen mountain pass. He didn't speak, but he showed us history isn't just textbooks, it's lives we overlook, unless we choose to see. Her professor wept. The board wept. Dr. Porter wept. They framed it, hung it by the exhibit entrance with a bronze caption, "She saw him." Isn't that beautiful? Raymond never chased the glory, never. No books, no ceremonies, no applause for him. He walked to the VA hospital to chat with orderlies, brought flowers weekly to his late wife Helen's grave, fixed a neighbor's leaky sink, rounded up stray shopping carts in the grocery lot. No medals adorned his chest, but that jacket. That worn, snow-scented leather bomber. He wore it always. And every so often, once, twice a month, someone new knocked. A veteran, a kid, a stranger who'd driven hours after seeing the video online, just to say thank you. Raymond never turned them away, opened the door, nodded once, let them in. No war stories, just coffee and quiet listening. How does a man stay so humble? One Sunday evening, General Matthew Conrad returned to the museum, no pomp, just him. He walked past artifacts, past medals gleaming under glass, and sat on that oak bench beneath the plaque. A folded letter rested in his jacket, no notes, no fuss. He sat, then stood, placing it gently there. As he turned, a young family stepped in, mother, father, daughter, and a boy, 9 years old, eyes huge. "Are you him?" the boy whispered. "The one who saluted the old man?" The general knelt, soft as a prayer. "No," he said. "I'm the one who finally learned how." Can you hear the grace in that? Later, Raymond Ellis slipped away, quietly, in his sleep, no speeches, no last words. He just didn't wake up. When word spread, people came, not for show, but memory. A nurse flew from Kansas, a corporal drove from Michigan, strangers who knew only the story stood outside the chapel, hands clasped, heads bowed. General Conrad spoke, brief and true. He lived his life the way he fought his war, without asking for recognition and without ever walking away from what was right. Then silence, not tradition, but respect, ancient and deep. The museum added one last touch. Near the exit, a wooden case held a single treasure, a frayed, faded brown leather bomber jacket, zipper mended with thread. The plaque read, Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis, Korea, 1950. He never asked for honor, but his silence demanded it. That's how he's remembered, not with noise, but a quiet that shifts a room. Not grand gestures, but stillness that lifts others tall. He didn't shout, why would he? Because when men like him speak, the mighty listen. And when they're gone, their silence echoes forever. The museum added one last touch. Near the exit, a wooden case held a single treasure, a frayed, faded brown leather bomber jacket, zipper mended with thread. The plaque read, Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis, Korea, 1950. He never asked for honor, but his silence demanded it. That's how he's remembered, not with noise, but a quiet that shifts a room. Not grand gestures, but stillness that lifts others tall. He didn't shout, why would he? Because when men like him speak, the mighty listen. And when they're gone, their silence echoes forever. In our darkest moments, kindness finds a way, often in the quietest corners. Not every hero craves the spotlight, some just need to know someone's belly is full today. Isn't that enough to change a life? You might forget this tale, but if no one retells it, history fades to silence forever. Subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where justice shines, kindness endures, and no quiet hero is ever lost. In our darkest moments, kindness finds a way, often in the quietest corners. Not every hero craves the spotlight, some just need to know someone's belly is full today. Isn't that enough to change a life? You might forget this tale, but if no one retells it, history fades to silence forever. Subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where justice shines, kindness endures, and no quiet hero is ever lost.